If the Premier won't rip up his anti-worker legislation for the sake of kids, parents, education workers, will he do it to salvage his so-called brand?
To reply, the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's nice to see the opposition's changing the message. They're actually worried about kids because they're worried about the unions yesterday and the day before and the day before. But from the beginning, Mr. Speaker, I've been very clear that we will do whatever it takes to keep Ontario's 2 million students in the class. We will do whatever it takes to give students and parents certainty. After 2 years of pandemic disruptions, enough is enough. We need kids in the classroom learning. This is about their mental, emotional, physical well-being of 2 million students, and therefore the respective families after 2 very difficult years brought on by the pandemic. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, QP refuses, and they absolutely refuse to withdraw their strike action. They refuse to back down from shutting down schools. Mr. Speaker, QP has left us no choice but to use legislation to ensure stability.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. A supplementary question.
Thank you, Speaker. Actually, the Premier does have a choice.
Yeah.
He could make a good offer. He could make a difference in the lives of our children and our education workers. Speaker, the Premier says that education workers are little guys too, little gals. This government thinks it's okay for them to have to use food banks.
Yep.
The Premier is acting like a bad boss. When bad bosses disrespect and underpay people for long enough, those people quit. They walk.
Yep.
It won't be just Friday or next week that parents have to worry about if education workers leave the profession. It's the future of their kids' education.
Yep.
If the Premier won't rip up his anti-worker legislation for the sake of kids, parents and education workers, will he do it to avoid getting booed in public again for acting like a bad boss?
And the response from the order. Order. Premier.
You know, we live in a democracy. People spoke June 2nd very loud. And that's why they lost seats, and we filled the seats. Mr. Speaker, we will always support the frontline workers.
Come to order.
Our offer includes an increased wages, the largest in the entire country, Mr. Speaker, and maintains the most generous pension and benefit plan, again, in the entire country, including 131 paid sick days. The fact is, QP demanded a nearly 50% increase and threatened a strike if they didn't get it. They have left us no other choice.
The official opposition will come to order. The Premier, please reply.
They have left us with no other choice but to proceed with legislation. For the sake of Ontario's 2 million students and their parents, schools must remain open. Mr. Speaker, we're using every tool at our disposal to make sure kids are in class full-time, where they need and deserve to be. Mr. Speaker, we are investing $26.6 billion in...
Thank you. Thank you. Final supplementary.
Speaker, again to the Premier. Before the election, this government went on a so-called charm offensive to court workers. Most workers saw through this government. They remembered when his government cancelled the minimum wage increase and took away paid sick days.
Yep.
After the election, now workers know without a doubt that this government is not really interested in them. The second this government got what it wanted, it lost the workers' phone number. And it lost direction to the bargaining table.
Yep.
If the Premier won't rip up his anti-worker legislation for the sake of kids, parents and education workers, will he do it to stop embarrassing his own Labour minister?
The Premier.
Mr. Speaker, we're investing more than $26.6 billion in public education this year, the single largest investment in Ontario's history. Of that $26.6 billion, that our government is spending on public education, 80% of that $26.6 billion goes solely towards paying salaries. Education funding for this school year is $2 billion more than the final year of the NDP and the Liberals' rule. Our focus is on mental and emotional and physical health of Ontario's 2 million students and their families. The students have had enough. The parents have had enough. The NDP and Liberal can't have it both ways. They either stand with the students or parents, or they support shutting down schools, and they support shutting down schools, keeping kids at home, and a million parents wondering what to do. It strikes their students, and the PC Party is the only party that's standing.
Please take a seat. Stop the clock.